Okay, so this is where we are so far. I got all the gauges mounted. These two here, one's for water pressure or water temperature, and the other one's for oil pressure. And there's capillaries and tube that goes through here. So I have to mount those when this is out at the car. But everything else works. I use a 12-volt transformer here to test the light bulbs, make sure all the bulbs work. It's a lot cleaner. I put quick disconnects for everything. So this is for constant 12 volts. This is for ground. I'm sorry, this is for the light dimmer switch. This is constant 12 volts. Here's the tach signal and the fuel signal. So we got the lamp, the headlight lamp switch here all mounted. Same with the wiper. Mounted the vintage air control panel here, and then I got a new chassis for the radio. So what this looks like in the front, I modified this just a tiny bit. I put in turn signal indicators here. So I traced the wiring to find the turn signal indicators in the harness inside. So everything's mounted, everything looks good. And you can see the ignition switch now is pushed out towards the edge of the bezel or the inner edge of the bezel where it's supposed to be. So I think we are ready to hit the car dash, and I'll show you what I've done there. So I opted to use these quick disconnects here and just to extend the wiring just a little bit, so that way it's easier for me to pull the dash or connect the dash back. I could have used I was going to use a quick disconnect like this, but I figured, this is good enough for what I want out of it. I'm thinking I'm not going to be pulling the dash a whole lot. I hope not. So anyways, all right, so let's get to the car and see what's going on with the harness there. And yeah, I think we're close to putting this all back together again. All right, so stay tuned. Okay, so I'm ready to put the dash in. I got the water temperature gauge and the oil pressure gauge in here. So you got to make sure when you put these on that the bracket that holds the meter has to go, you got to feed the cable, the capillary through the bracket. And then, so basically you feed the meter through the other side, obviously, and then you feed the bracket, the cable through the bracket. Okay, and you can't unscrew this. If you try to unscrew this or you kink it or whatever, this is kind of like a copper tubing. It's a sealed system. So if you try to unscrew it or you kink it, you break it, this is no good anymore. You're going to have to replace the whole thing. I mean, there's ways to fix it, but it's really convoluted. You're better off just replacing the whole thing. And then for the oil pressure, again, you got to feed it through this side. But on this side, we're going to connect the nylon tubing to it. Okay, so make sure you do this in the correct steps. Put this on first, and then put this little piece here next. Wish I knew what it was called. And then it doesn't go in too far before it hits bottom. It's about just a little over that much, at least on this meter. So you put that in. I can feel the tubing touching bottom, and you slide that in there, and then you start screwing that in place. Okay, and make sure this tube doesn't slide out, of course. Okay, and then I got one wrench to hold the bottom, and then you snugly tighten the top. Make sure that it's snug, but don't over tighten it, and that should do it. Okay, now I should point out that some folks like to take the air out of this. I have quite a bit of oil already in it, but you can just loosen this up a little bit and crank the car a few times until oil starts spewing out a little bit, and that'll take most of the air out, and that should suffice for your needs. After all, it's a pressure gauge, so air, oil, it's still pressure. All right, stay tuned. Okay, so we got the instrument panel all finished up and installed. So yeah, I left that part out, but it wasn't rocket science. Here's a few tips. So obviously you have to leave the steering column down. That's the last thing you're going to put back up. So on the panel, you want to put the top in. Make sure you have the clips for the screws in place already, obviously. And then you want to put the top in, slide the top in first, and then slide the bottom in. It'll be a lot easier. Slide the top in first because it fits just underneath the dash. There's a little bit of a lip, and then you slide the bottom in. And when you're sliding the bottom in, here's a mistake I made. I was wondering why it wasn't coming in flush. Well, the reason is I was covering up the brake release. So make sure you clear the brake release. I put in the ducts. I rerouted the ducts behind the panels and made them nice so you don't see a lot of ductwork underneath like I used to see. Interesting switch here. Found out by accident. That switch is for cutouts. This car has cutouts on the mufflers underneath that open up the muffler to make a lot of noise. I doubt I'll ever use it, but it's there. The other nice thing about this car is it's got a beautiful stereo system. We got speakers in the front with crossovers, and then in the back we got all JL audio with an amp, two ways. Really nice system back here. And the one thing you might have noticed that if you saw in the beginning video on part 1, the interior looks different. Took out all the cloth and we reupholstered thanks to Emilio's Upholstery in Grants Pass. It has beautiful upholstery, beautiful stitching. So this car looks pretty sweet at this point. So really happy with it. And now we have a wonderful dash with good wiring. So I can easily say that this was a relief of a project once I finally finished it. So what's next? Next video I'm pretty excited about. So the one last thing, well, there's two things with this. One, we had to replace the speedometer cable, and that was an adventure on its own. So I got to show you that video when I push that one out. And the second video, and the last video probably that I'm going to do with respect to this car, is pretty cool. And that is, if you guys like putting in billet hinges, and mind you, these hinges on this car are really clean, really beautiful. But you know what? I think that these will look a lot better. And here's the thing, and this is why I'm making a video, big deal you putting in hinges. The cool thing is those hinges, I'm going to spotlight that company. Those hinges you can put in by yourself. Not only are they very affordable compared to all the other billet hinges out there, but those have a unique system of casters where not only can you put the hood and put the hinge in by yourself, you can align the hood by yourself. And that's huge because usually it takes two people at minimum to put in hinges and align your hood. And with the system that's on these hinges, it's really cool because it allows you to make alignment, your hood alignment, very easy with the hinges in place. And like I said, you can do it on your own. You don't need help. Not that there's wrong with that. People helping is always a great thing. That's bonding. But, you know, I thought that was super sweet. So stay tuned for that video. That's coming up. All right, enough rambling. Like I always say, enjoy life. Life is short. Enjoy the heck out of it. All right, no time for hate. All right, there we go. Peace out. Awesome.